In today's video, we have a variety of NHL topics we're taking a look at here today. We're looking at some trade talk around the Detroit Red Wings linked to a variety of players on the Pittsburgh Penguins organization. So we'll look at some possibilities there. We're going to take a look at some different options as well regarding the Edmonton Oilers and some potential goaltenders they may target. Looking at a couple of athletic articles by James Muriel, looking at some goalies for the Edmonton Oilers. He also has another mailbag article where he's looking at the future of Quinn Hughes in Vancouver, suggesting that if Quinn Hughes is going to push to get to free agency in 2 years' time, maybe this time next year we could see a trade. Could this be the last year for Quinn in Vancouver? We'll discuss that possibility and the upcoming contract extension for Kaprizov. We have some new updates on what the Wild are reportedly offering and what it could mean for his future as well. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we've got a variety of things we're going to take a look at here today, mostly trade related, and then we've got the contract for Kaprizov, which will kick things off here with that topic. Of course, Kaprizov is one of the top players in the game, very exciting player, arguably one of the most dynamic ever in Minnesota franchise history. They certainly want to make sure that they keep him there and hopefully can play his whole career in Minnesota is what they'd like to see. And we'll find out soon enough if that's something that he sees in his future here as well. We've seen reports throughout the offseason that the Wild, of course, are very keen on getting an extension in place for Kaprizov and seem to be willing to meet the high asking demands of what he and his agent are going to be looking for, citing reports and comments even from GM Bill Guerin and ownership earlier at the beginning of the offseason, stating that they would be willing to make him the highest paid winger, that they were, money was not going to be any object. They'll make sure they do whatever it takes to get him to the point where he's happy and willing to extend and remain with the Wild for an extended period of time. New reports from Michael Russo of The Athletic suggest that they may even be willing to give him as much as close to $16 million, which is pretty lucrative. If you look at the fact that Mitch Marner just signed in Vegas after a 100-point season in a pretty darn productive career so far with the Maple Leafs, leaves there to go to Vegas on an 8-year deal. Was it $12 million? So could Kaprizov end up making it $3 or $4 million more than Marner? That's a substantial amount of money. There's also talk around Kaprizov, just like we've heard about other top stars like McDavid, that he may not want an 8-year deal. I mean, a combination of keeping the pressure on the organization to make sure they remain competitive, and that at the same time can make sure that he's able to do another big contract when the cap is even higher before he's too late into his career to get another big cash in, right? So you kind of want to maximize your earnings at the same time keeping pressure on the organization to remain competitive so that you have a chance to win, and that if you ever become unhappy, that you have a little bit more flexibility at your fingertips. So it could be a win-win, right? But for the Wild, imagine if they signed him to like a 4 or 5 year contract at like $15-16 million. That could be a pretty darn lucrative deal on a short-term basis for Kaprizov, and it sure sounds like they're willing to give him basically whatever he wants. That's obviously there are restraints on what they can do. It's a maximum of 20% of the cap can any one player sign for. So I don't know that they're going to go all the way to that mark, obviously, but that's a lot of money. He would surpass pretty well everybody in the game, except at least until McDavid signs. So at that point, you would think McDavid would then become the highest paid player here yet again. But we'll see what happens. If Kaprizov, who should be getting back to Minnesota here shortly, if he's offered that kind of money and pretty much can get whatever term he wants, if he doesn't sign and goes into the season like we've heard rumors about McDavid on, then that's going to be very telling. And it's going to be very concerning for the Wild that he could be potentially gearing up to head to free agency, and maybe he's not sure that he wants to stay on a long-term basis. I mean, the same goes for Connor McDavid. Like we've heard, in the last day or so, that he's most likely, like very, very high probability at this point, not signing an extension, not even getting deep into negotiations before the season even starts. I mean, that's going to get a lot of Oilers fans and management and ownership, everybody a tad bit concerned, to say the least. I mean, he's the best player in the world. So if he's uncertain and not sure, that's that's really bad for business. The other thing I'd say with that as well is with Connor McDavid, you got to remember his really good buddy and running mate. That he's, like I said, it's not just an on-ice relationship with he and Leon Draisaitl. They are very close off the ice, arguably best friends, right? So do they want to play together forever? Probably, but at the same time, they may end up, you never know, at some point, understanding that the business might be better for them to not. I don't know how they feel about that, but you got to think, if Connor decided that he didn't like the direction of the team, Leon just signed a massive 8-year deal this time last year. If Connor doesn't do the same, and if he decides that this is it, that he may not want to stay, you got to think that's going to upset Leon, and they could be at risk to lose both. It could be an absolute disaster if McDavid won't sign at Edmonton. They could go from being Stanley Cup finalists to down in the dumps pretty quick. So I know that they're going to be doing everything they can. I know that obviously ownership's been really good to Connor the whole time he's there. Like I said, I know McDavid and his wife are very much entrenched in Edmonton. I just can't see them wanting to leave. But sometimes it's not a case of what you want. It's just a case of what you feel you need to do and feel what's best for you from a professional standpoint, right? So we'll have to wait and see how things go. But the Kaprizov and McDavid extensions and whether or not they get done here over the next month or so before the season starts, or early on, it's going to be some of the top storylines that we follow, and it's going to keep things very interesting and keep a lot of teams and fan bases kind of on their toes, hoping that things work out to keep their star players with their existing clubs. Now, as I mentioned, we'll stick with the Oilers here for a second. We'll go on to talk about some of the Oilers goalie stuff here that I want to mention here today. Another Athletic article I was looking at, this one from James Muriel, was a mailbag article from a few days back, looking at some of the questions he was answering, and one of them was around Oilers goaltending, and really caused him to really look hard around the league, which we've done here, and kind of ask yourself, besides the Skinner-Pickard tandem that they've had in Edmonton, are there really many, if any, realistic options of goalies that we feel are legitimate upgrades that are realistically actually going to be available, that teams would probably be willing to trade for the right price? And the answer is, that's kind of tough to say. Like, there's not much. You're looking at some younger goalies, like, would New Jersey trade Nico Dawes? Probably. Because they're going to be probably at risk to lose him on waivers, right? But is he an upgrade? He's an unknown. He's not established enough to really say that he's an upgrade. Connor Ingram in Utah is back after a long stretch in the player assistance program. They've got more than enough goalies. He could be possibly available. Again, is he an upgrade, or would they even consider moving one of their other goalies? Are they an upgrade? It's not certain. We've heard about Sebastian Cossa out of Detroit, maybe. Even if the Red Wings said, you know what, because they traded for Gibson, so I don't see them flipping Gibson before ever playing a game for them. But would they move Talbot? Talbot, of course, familiar with Edmonton, played there before. Knew that was many, many moons ago. Completely different team now. Talbot's still, has had some good game in them lately, but again, is it an upgrade? There's none of those guys you can say for sure 100% would be an upgrade, and that's a problem. The Oilers are kind of in a difficult spot here. He suggested in his answer in the Athletic mailbag article that they might be better off going to one of the teams that maybe have a stronger tandem. There's a few 1A, 1Bs around the league, or even some of the guys that are not really a 1A, 1B, but pretty solid tandem where teams maybe are willing. But again, some of these teams are probably going to want to start the season, see what they have before they really make a firm decision on that. But you'd have to kind of hope that if you're Edmonton, that these teams have a slow start and are willing to make changes. So, for example, looking at a couple of teams, one that was mentioned, which I don't think it would be Toronto, because they have Joseph Woll and Anthony Stolarz. I don't see the Leafs wanting to move either of those guys right now. I think they're still long-term. It's difficult to say how long they both stay. At some point, they might be forced to kind of pick. Woll's a little bit younger. I don't know how they go about that, but for right now, I think they're going to continue to ride with both guys. They both have an injury history as well, so you need multiple guys around because, Stoller's missed a good chunk last year too. Wasn't too long, 2 series, but it was, enough, right? So I just don't see Toronto looking to move one of those guys. So I don't really see that being a realistic option right now. You looked at a team like Carolina, they always seem to be a little bit reluctant to kind of rely too heavy on Kochetkov. Would they consider moving him? Probably not. How long is Freddie Anderson going to be there for? I believe Freddie has a no move, so they might not want to move him either. But that gets complicated. So again, is it realistic? Probably not. Looking at a team like Washington. Now, Washington was a really good team last year, one of the best in the Eastern Conference and tops in the NHL. A lot of people have them pegged for maybe having a little bit of a step back this year. If that happens, they got Logan Thompson, Charlie Lindgren. Thompson took over the number 1 spot really down the stretch there. Is Lindgren an upgrade over Skinner and Pickard? Again, Lindgren's had his moments, but again, another guy who kind of found his game a little bit later into his career. I don't know. Are you going to trust Charlie Lindgren over Stuart Skinner in a Stanley Cup final if they made it there again? I don't know that you do. He's a proven goalie at the NHL. Not saying he's not an NHL goalie. But again, is it an upgrade? That's the hard part, right? The one mention here that I kind of thought made the most sense, and again, this is a big what if, but if the Blues had a slow start, what about Jordan Binnington? Now, we talked before. I talked last year after 4 Nations. I wondered if Doug Armstrong might sell high on Binnington's value, given that he was a huge part of Canada's win in that tournament. Really proved that even though the team might not have had the most success since they won the Stanley Cup, that he can still be an elite level goalie in the big moments and can still play under pressure. Game 7 Stanley Cup, he'd have to be one of the guys in the conversation based on how he's proven in the gold medal game again, just like he did when they won the Cup over the Bruins in 2019, that he still has it. Still not that old. Contracts nearing the end. They've got Joel Holfer there. Are they ready to sell high on Binnington while because of the international play? Because after he won the Cup, you look at his numbers. I'm not saying he was a bad goalie or anything, but he did kind of dip down in his performance. It wasn't as, and that's a lot. And the thing too with goalies, a lot of it's team related too. So it's not strictly 100% on him, but just wasn't quite as strong, right? So you can see some dips, and then but he still had some strong play throughout there. Maybe just not quite as consistent, but then last year was a bit of a comeback season. And after 4 Nations, I thought he played really good down the stretch too. Certainly gave him a confidence boost. And this year, where he's going to be vying for an Olympic job, again, for that same kind of role, I suspect he's going to be at the top of his game. So again, I do wonder if the Blues didn't have the greatest start, or even if they do okay. Because to me, if you're Edmonton and you go into the season with Skinner and Pickard, which it seems like they're probably going to have to do, I just don't know that you want to leave that to the trade deadline. I think at the deadline, having a goalie be integrated to a new team to learn how to work with the D-core and just to be settled in, it's probably the position that's the hardest to do. And, you want to make that move earlier in the year to have them, really integrated within that team before you get to that point in the season. So I don't know if they go into the season with this tandem, they can't wait too long. We talked about, would Carter Hart be an option? We don't even know if he's going to be able to be signed. And even then, he wasn't a top 10 goalie when he last left the league, when he took the leave of absence from the Flyers. And of course, eventually ended up, all those guys had their ability to play suspended. Right. So again, he could be an option if he's reinstated, but is he an upgrade? We don't know. There's so many question marks there, but I think the one goal you could say would be Binnington. You can't say with certainty that he'd be available. It'd have to have the right circumstances and conditions line up. But if he could be, You have to think that would be one to really seriously look at. Now, the other team I want to focus on, Detroit. Another Athletic article, this one from Max Bultman. Looking at, again, this was like a mailbag article, asked if he can see the Red Wings making a trade for either a top 6 forward or a top 4 defenseman here soon. And basically lists off the fact that they've been linked to several Penguins players, including Erik Karlsson, Rickard Rakell, and Brian Rust. They've all had various interests in all those players, and they would be some of the names that you could see them maybe going after, but he also references the fact that those trades would be complicated, high asking prices from Kyle Dubas in Pittsburgh. Like Rakell and Rust, you're probably looking at maybe Karlsson too. You're probably looking at a first-round pick. Plus, you're looking at Karlsson's, we mentioned that, Karlsson's, aging, contract's expensive, complicated. Is he really going to be a big upgrade on that back end? It's questionable at this point. Rickard, Rakell, and Brian Rust would be good pieces on the wings, I think, to kind of help boost their top 6 if they were able to be acquired. But again, like he said, not the cheapest asking prices right now. Detroit's going to be in tough to me. Like, I'm not sure that getting over the hump is going to be easy this year. Like, we saw the Bruins take a major step back last year in the Atlantic, but we, obviously still the Florida teams are still really strong. Toronto will be interesting to see how they are without Marner, but are they going to be weakened to the point that they're not a playoff team? That's unlikely, right? And then you got Ottawa and Montreal took big steps last year. Can they build upon that? A lot of people say that the Sabres might even be better than the Red Wings. That's debatable, but it's going to be interesting to see. It's interesting. They definitely need some upgrades, and some of these players would be good fits. But as Boltman makes point here, going to be expensive, and we know Yzerman is a little bit stingy, a little bit reluctant. He doesn't want to hurt the future. So we'll see what happens. But Detroit definitely needs to make some moves. They haven't had the greatest offseason, in my opinion. There's still a lot of holes here, especially on the back end. They need help in the worst way. You've now got Justin Hall, Jacob Bernard-Docker, Travis Hamonic all vying for spots, and they could end up playing 2 out of 3 of them at least at a time. And that, to me, is just not good. Now, Bernard-Docker's not too bad, but like Hall and Hamonic, if you have to play both of them at the same time, it's not good. It's not good at all. But we'll see what happens there. I can see Detroit needing to make moves, but whether or not they can or they will be another story here. And the other article as well was a James Burnell article, another mailbag one, looking at the Quinn Hughes situation in Vancouver and whether or not he's going to end up teaming up with his brothers or how that could all play out. And would Vancouver, how's this all going to work, right? And essentially he says that, basically this time next year, we're going to know if Quinn will extend, or at least have a good idea, because obviously come July 1st, the Canucks are going to be able to approach him about an extension. I suspect this season and how things go will play a big role in his choice. But if he won't talk contract, or if he's unwilling to extend at that point, you have to be concerned. And if it seems like, you just hope that he's going to be upfront enough with the organization that he's looking towards teaming up with his brothers and that he's going to walk to free agency. Because if that's the case, if he can be honest and tell them, like he says here, do the Canucks not really have to make a move? You can't lose him for nothing. You just can't. And, New Jersey would be in a spot the year after with enough contracts coming off the books and the cap going way up that they'd be in a prime spot to be able to sign him no problem. So if they trade it for him ahead of time, to get him a year early, it would make sense because they'd have no problem keeping him. And they have a lot that they could offer Vancouver. Whether it be some young defensemen like Seamus Casey or Nemec or Silyev. You got a veteran defenseman like Dougie Hamilton. You got younger forwards like Dawson Mercer or others. You get draft picks in there. There's a lot that the Devils could have to offer up to Vancouver to try to pry Quinn out of Vancouver a year early. And obviously it's a question that Canucks fans don't want to really see asked. It's a question that I'm sure the Canucks organization hope that they never really have to deal with. But if he won't sign next summer, do they not have to make a move? To try to get the best deal they can. They're not going to have a lot of leverage either, which is kind of sucks for them too. But realistically, if the Hughes brothers want to team up, they can make it happen. I mean, we already heard about Luke Hughes wanting to match his contract to Jack's expiration as well. So, you know, regardless of Quinn ends up in New Jersey or not, you know, like I said, it makes me wonder, you know, whether regardless of where Quinn signs, even if he does stay in Vancouver, would he sign an extension to align with their expiry? If they could all end up expiring at the same time, that could be a very, very, very interesting July 1, where they could maybe team up even somewhere else. I mean, I don't think there's any issues with them playing in New Jersey. Like I said, I think Jack and Luke seem to like it there. I think they have a good relationship with Tom Fitzgerald. I think there's a long history there. Like, there's no problems. But again, we don't know, right? And the next question is Tom Fitzgerald going to be the GM in New Jersey in 2030? You don't even know. That's way too far ahead to plan for. So, going to be interesting times. But if you're Vancouver and Quinn doesn't want to extend next summer, do you not have to trade him? Could this be the last year of Quinn Hughes of Vancouver? Let me know what you think in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.